Welcome. This is the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinscoe, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, Forbes contributor, and general explorer of the service and experience space. On the podcast, I seek out and interview entrepreneurs, leading business people, authors, tech leaders, academics, and generally cool people doing interesting stuff in the service and experience space. Check out the archive at adrianswinscoe.com. That's enough from me. Let's get into the interview. Before we get into the podcast, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to the folks at TextExpander for sponsoring this episode of my podcast. TextExpander is an autocomplete tool that allows your team to eliminate repetitive typing and stay on the same page with just a few keystrokes, allowing you to delight more customers in less time. Check out the link in the show notes to find out more and to get a 20% discount for the first 12 months of TextExpander if you use the code SWINSCO. Now, let's get into the interview. So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have Sue Duris, who is the principal consultant at M4 Communications and a long-time player in the whole service and experience sort of space. Anyway, Sue, how you doing? Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Adrian, and thank you for inviting me. And I'm excited, and I'm glad you didn't say that I was seasoned. Just that I've worked in CX for a long time.
Oh no, none of this kind of veteran or seasoned kind of like terminology kind of over here. It's just or long in the tooth or whatever, because I've got plenty of grey hair to sort of like to show that I've been around the block a few times. But Sue, for the benefit of our listeners and also the people that could read the highlights of the podcast that we put together, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also about the work that you do?
Sure. Well, I've been in the CX space for more than 15 years as a practitioner and a consultant, and currently I am, as you noted, principal consultant of M4 Communications.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do is I work with organizations, size doesn't matter, whether they want to become customer-centric or they're already customer-centric and they want to be better at being customer-centric.
Mm-hmm.
A number of things that I do, my specialties are building CX programs and more specifically, voice of the customer programs. Another thing that I do as well is because I have experience in marketing, product, sales, I've worked with organizations on how to best align these key functions. Because as we know, CX is all about alignment if you want to deliver that consistent customer experience.
Yeah, perfect. Now, because we were talking in the setup to this, and we were agreeing that the whole sort of service and experience space is under pressure right now. I mean, pressure from all sorts of angles, like elevated demand levels, employee and agent attrition, new technology coming, just like showing up like magic, budgets being kind of cut, kind of economic pressures, all of these different things, and like pressure on to deliver ROI. So we agreed that sort of building support and also getting that alignment in an organization and building support at the senior executive level is absolutely kind of paramount. But when we were talking, you were saying that actually selling the C-suite on CX really starts with customer understanding. And well, I know that sort of selling into the C-suite or communicating or align ourselves with the C-suite is something that's always on our to-do list when it comes to new projects and things. But I want to ask you if you could explain more about what you mean by that, selling the C-suite on CX really starts with customer understanding. Tell me what you mean by that and how CX professionals should be going about building that understanding.
Oh, absolutely. I was thinking about this the other day, looking at the 5 competencies that CXPA talks about, and they put customer understanding before customer experience strategy. And I think that really is the way to go, because I'll tell you, you and I both go to these conferences, or we'll talk talk to people in a community, and there'll be someone says, yeah, I want to do the CX thing because this competitor had this great success. So if they're having that great success, I want to have that great success too.
Mm-hmm.
Problem with that is you have to know your why. What is the purpose for CX? How is that going to help your existing customers? How is it going to help your business? And the reason that customer understanding is important are two things, and it's what I talk about, the two key traits that CX professionals have to have. One, and not just CX professionals, but people that are involved in delivering an experience to customers. One is empathy. And we talk about empathy all the time. Walking in your customer's shoes, and then the second one is curiosity, being curious enough to care.
Mm.
Why is it important for me to give them a great experience? Why should I care that from a B2B customer, typically for them to be more successful, or B2C customer, help them to simplify their day? Why should I care about those two things?
Mm.
Those are the two things that we as customer experience professionals must be proactive about, because if we don't want to understand who our customers are, then we can't create that strategy and that customer experience and that feedback program for them. So along those lines, with being curious, it's finding out that initial feedback. Who are my customers?
Mm-hmm.
And whether you want to create personas, create segments, so you can basically group who those customers are to deliver that experience that's right for them, because we all know that one size does not fit all.
And so, I mean, so you say that there's a competencies around the CXPA can talk about, and that's kind of like fair enough, and that's at that's at the professional level. But I guess the idea about sort of walking in somebody else's shoes, that's great because it builds empathy, it builds perspective, all these different things. But then there's also the curiosity. So it means that it actually you're curious, you care enough to be curious, so you go like deeper on that, rather than it just being a tick box exercise. Like you show up, you have a look around, you go, I've seen it, and then you kind of walk away. You don't really get it, as it were. Now, but my question would be, is like, that's all very well and good at a professional level, but I mean, should we be trying to get the C-suite, like the kind of top execs, to be almost developing these habits themselves and getting that exposure themselves? Is that what we should be saying? It's almost like advocating kind of up the way and then taking people on a journey or an experience themselves.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I had said what I did at the beginning, that the C-suite needs to understand why they're doing customer experience.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to know who their customers are. That's why most companies that work well, that do CX well, the C-suite will actually shadow in the contact center and listen to whether it's an actual call
Mm-hmm.
that an agent is making, or looking at transcripts, or actually going through the process themselves on how to be a customer. Because with the C-suite, you have to be visual with them.
Yeah.
And you need to tie metrics to what's going on, and you need to use that data to be able to tell a story. If they can't see what's happening, they're not going to be able to buy into it and champion it. And that's what we need the C-suite to do. But it's not all about the C-suite. It has to be a top down and a bottom up. So that's why we also have to involve our employees and do the same things that we're doing with the C-suite.
Yeah.
Get them to understand what's going on with customers through storytelling, through showing them that what they're doing and the things that they do and don't do has an impact on how the customer feels about the brand.
Right. Yeah, no, because I think so when you were talking then, I wonder if, so like you said, there's a lot of leaders that are out there, these top executives that sit at the top end of organizations, whatever the size, and they will, because it's part of their DNA, as it were, they will sit and listen on calls. They will go out and customer visits. They will go on delivery runs with their logistics drivers. They will hang out in the warehouse. They do all these different things. And it's a bit like I was speaking to a lady called Manisha Busal, who won my customer CX Leader of the Year award in 2022, like last year. And I had her on the podcast. I did it with Claire Muscat, and she was talking about all the things that she did. She would go and mystery shop her support team. She'd go and hang out in the warehouse. She'd go on delivery runs with her drivers. She will kind of hang out in the call center or the contact center, listen to kind of customer queries, do all these different things. It's like that immersion sort of thing. But then when you were talking, I was thinking about, there's a film that's come out, if anybody that's got, I think it's on Netflix. It's called Bank of Dave. And it's a British film, and it's a beautifully kind of like human against the odds type of film. And it's about this guy in Burnley. He sells vans, very successful businessman. It's based on a true story, but he ends up lending a whole bunch of money to the local community. So he says, in order to do this more efficiently, he wants to set up a bank, right? However, setting up a bank is actually quite difficult. And he knows this, so he employs a lawyer, and he says, the lawyer advises him, they're probably going to say no. And he goes, yes, but I want them to publicly tell me why they're saying no. And so I'll tell you why I thought about that as I've done the preamble. And I wonder if there needs to be, because I don't think there's enough leaders that are doing this, collapsing the gap between them and the kind of customer and what it takes to deliver those real-time experiences, as it were. And I wonder if the CX professionals need to be braver in their approach to inviting people in to sort of collapse that gap here, like to have those experiences, to walk in people's shoes and to kind of to develop that curiosity. And should they be inviting people to do these things and getting them to tell them why they're not, rather than just trying to encourage them to do it? It's almost like try to take a slightly different approach, if you understand my meaning. I
do. And I have a comment for that.
Well, please do. I mean, it's like, I'm not talking about kind of naming and shaming sort of thing, but it's like, it's sort of in that sort of thing, because it's almost a bit like, it feels like the need for it is so urgent that sometimes we might need to do something a bit radical in order to progress it in many ways.
Well, I think, just to back up a little bit, I hear from consultants especially, and I do mentor CX practitioners, and I hear from them as well. And but the CX consultants, they say, I can't. I'm trying to get the CX program into this organization, but the C-suite won't listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And as CX professionals, we have a laundry list of things that we have to do. And if a regular person looked at all the things that we've been involved in and we have to be involved in to drive CX, they'd go, oh my God, you should get an award for best human, best human being. One of the things that we have to do is we have to understand our internal customer, which is the C-suite and employees, as well as our external customer. I wrote a article about this very thing a few years ago, that you have different chief X. So you have your chief technical officer, technology officer, you have your chief marketing officer, you have your chief financial officer. Each one of those people have their own agendas, and they'll have their own language, and they have their own things that motivate them. If you can't reach them and get them on your side, because we can't take the C-suite as a whole. We have to do bite-sized things. And if we can get one person in the C-suite to get the light bulb on and, oh, I get it, the aha moment, then that spreads. So it's very important. For example, I just wrote an article about how the CTO and the CX leader need to basically become allies.
Yeah.
And one thing there is showing the CTO. So we know that the CX leader and the CTO are striving for value within an organization. The CTO is looking for the best solutions that work within the infrastructure that's going to have the biggest impact. Well, the CX leader is looking for value, very much the same value. And it's talking to the CTO. I know that you're looking at this. Maybe I can be your coach, be your customer-centric coach on some of the projects that mean the most to you, because you're building credibility that way. It might take a little longer. I mean, you can't do these things overnight. It's a long process. I mean, CX takes a huge commitment, and more so commitment than investment. It's not one of these happens in 30 days type things. But when you take the time to get to know these stakeholders, you're building allies. You're building alignment, which is key to drive this CX.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great point, and it's something I remember talking to Jack Springman last year. I mean, who's sadly passed away since then, and he said exactly the same thing. He says, like, many people in the customer experience and service sort of space talk about having empathy for their customers, but they lack empathy for their internal customers. And I think it's exactly the point that you're making. You need to build bridges. And it reminds me also of a time when I worked, this is nearly 20 years ago, and I worked in a big corporate, and we were doing kind of like new business development. We're creating business plans and project proposals and all these different sort of things for new projects. And one of the things that I learned kind of there was this idea that the socialization of plans. So rather than going to a if you like, a board meeting or an investment kind of meeting where you're doing a cold pitch, you almost have to spend the time to delay it so you can do the socialization of your kind of project. So to build the bridges, to make the friends, to develop the allies and things around the place, like with your CTO or your CFO or your ops person or kind of whoever you need to, so that there are no surprises and you can make amendments to your proposal to take account of other people's priorities and objectives and all these different, those different things. And these things take time, but it's about putting I guess the hardy yards and the shoe leather in to kind of build that relevancy. And it's like you might need to burn through a couple of pairs of shoes, in order to get the right level of support that you need.
Absolutely. Definitely.
So, I mean, who would you say is the main C-suite execs that CX professionals need to be building kind of bridges with?
Well, if you're on mycustomer.com this week, my article about the CX leader and the chief information officer, chief CTO, chief technology officer, whatever you happen to have in your organization, why it's important that they become close.
Right.
And that I can tell you in one sentence that over 2/3 of IT projects, or excuse me, over 2/3 of CX projects are IT related.
Mm-hmm.
And over 2/3 of CIOs at best support the CX leader in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So how, and this is a huge, I would say, coaching step for CX to develop a bridge with the CTO, and coaching them on why CX is important. Because let's face it, ever since COVID, digital has become more complex.
Mm-hmm.
And the CTO knows this, and they have to figure out, what do I need to do to drive that value, which I spoke about a moment ago,
Mm-hmm.
and build these customer bridges so that we're driving customers, and I talk about customer lifetime value. How do we drive that customer lifetime value? So we're growing customers and we're growing the organization at the same time. The CTO realizes, I need the CX leader's help.
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side of that coin, the CX leader also knows that digital is becoming more complex. And if we want to attain CX maturity, which has been a nut that we've been trying to crack for years and we're stuck, that's where the CTO can assist.
Mm-hmm.
To me, technology is the glue that drives customer experience, but we can't be a digital first. We can't be digital first. We have to be customer first. And being customer first and knowing where we want to get with our customers and looking to see our tools and resources that we have in hand, and using technology to fill those gaps and drive that maturity is what's going to get us closer to the North Star.
Yeah. And
So,
so, I mean, so just maybe to get it down to sort of like almost like brass tacks a little bit, is like, because, I mean, in your experience, what's a good way to approach, say, like a CTO, which and that kind of might kind of work? Because, yeah, like you said before, CTOs have their own agenda and their own things. They're not just about customer experience; they're about everything. It's like the whole technological infrastructure that the whole business kind of sits on. I mean, so what would the pitch be, or what would the engagement look like? Would it be like, hey, I want to come and talk to you about CX? And they're like going, talk to the hand sort of thing.
think
first, or how would you approach it as a seasoned professional?
I would approach it as from starting as a beginner.
Mm-hmm.
Zen Buddhism, they talk about approach life as a beginner.
Mm-hmm.
And I would approach the CTO that way. Hello, my name is, hi, Ian. Or excuse me, hi, Adrian. My name's Sue. I'm I run customer experience. I know that we've met, and I just wanted to introduce myself, and maybe we can have a chat so I can pick your brain and get your feedback. I always like to ask for advice
Mm-hmm.
and ask for feedback,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the best way. Well, first, when somebody asks for your feedback, you know, that's that's very flattering.
Psychology 101, right?
Yeah, exactly. That somebody cares about that. And then if they're not if they're not sure of customer centricity, then I might want to offer some guidance, participate on projects that they're passionate about. There's your customer understanding, internal customer understanding, finding out what motivates them, building credibility with them so that we can have a conversation. Hey, that things are changing in the business, that I'm trying to drive customer experience deeper into the organization to help our customers. And I was wondering where I might be able to do a little bit more of that with our existing infrastructure.
Yeah.
The infrastructure, where the data is housed and things of that nature. I could really use your help and guidance on that. That's building that that's creating an ally, it's building a bridge, and you're getting somebody on your side potentially, and probably, to when there are um, more investments
Uh-huh.
that are needed, that they'll be at least a little bit more open, and maybe work with you on this investment would be better for infrastructure
Right.
and how we grow.
Yeah, and I think it's a bit like first of all, it's like, yes, it might be, I think what people need to remember is like, yes, it might be your project. Yes, you're keen to get your project off the ground, but the conversation you're having is actually not about you,
Mm-hmm.
and
Exactly.
it's about them. And if you relate it to like social situations, say for example, you were in a, I don't know, a meet and greet or a networking thing, and then we've all met them, right? There's people that just talk about themselves,
That's
and
true.
and they get, and unless they're telling very very good stories, kind of, and very believable stories, actually those people that just talk about themselves are it generally gets boring very quickly. And so
Absolutely.
I think you're right. So like almost when you talk about right at the beginning of our chat, we talked about one of those things around put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and then be curious. Be curious about them. Be curious about their perspective and their opinion about kind of maybe some of the things that you're doing. Sort of like ask for their help. Ask for guidance around what you're doing. It could be better align with what they're doing and how it might help them achieve some of their objectives.
Absolutely. And I would add, since you had asked the question, I would add the CFO
Mm-hmm.
as one, and the chief marketing officer as another. The chief financial officer has always been important to me because I started in finance.
Right.
And when I moved into product management, I knew, okay, on the business cases, I would go to the CFO or delegate, somebody who they had delegated to help me, because I wanted their feedback on, would this business case pass? So feedback and advice. When I moved into CX and talking with the chief financial officer, I was very interested in what are the metrics that they're using,
Mm-hmm.
and what are the things that they're they're not they're not only using, that they have available to them, so that I don't have to boil the ocean, reinvent the wheel
Mm-hmm.
type thing. So we're all on a consistent base.
Yeah.
And again, on the pathway to alignment, having that finance and technology aligned with me as allies, or maybe not 100% on board, but close enough that opens there's room to chat more about things.
Mm-hmm.
Having an open having an open-mindedness versus closing, closing the door completely. I will take that.
Yeah. And so I think it's right. I mean, I think we need to remember that organizations they're social entities. They might be housed in concrete structures, or maybe kind of completely digitally remote these days, but they're run on kind of like and they run on technology, but they're there to enable a bunch of people to deliver a bunch of things to other people that want to buy those things, whether they are tangible things or services or whatever. But it's like people. It's all about people, and everything else is there to facilitate that kind of like that exchange, as it were. And part of that to make an organization work is relationships. And I think that we get busy and busy and busy that we forget about some of this kind of relationships are some of the connective tissues of organizations. And I think we need to make sure that we spend as much time thinking about the relationships that we build within and across our organizations, if we want to try and give ourselves a better chance of success. But with that in mind, I wanted to ask you, Sue, do you have any kind of like stories that you can share that were about how you or others have done that sort of relationship building and what you've been able to what's been able to have been achieved, as it were, to like just sort of to bring it to life, because it's kind of hard, and sort of like maybe kind of if you've got a story or that you could tell us that sort of brings it to life, then that'd be super cool.
Sure. The one that springs to mind is I was CX director for a startup in the fintech space. CEO approached me, said, "Hey, Sue, we want to start on the right foot with this new business I'm proposing, and we want that to be customer experience. We want to start right on that." Nobody in the organization really knew customer experience. And so not only was my role understanding customers, building personas, strategy, and all these, building the program, it was also coaching teams on why customer experience is important. Why, if we embed these behaviors if we embed these behaviors, this is what we're going to get. And because it was an app, a phone app, as well as a web app, it was very important that customers who joined didn't just sign up from Google Play or the App Store, but actually were actively using the app. So especially from a technology, I was able to have conversations with the CTO, who not only didn't have English as his first language, but didn't understand CX at all. So really taking the time to explain customer experience. Can I help you in some way on the projects that you're working on? Take a look from a customer-centric perspective to kind of show you how your projects can align with what I'm trying to do with customer experience. So basically the things that the anecdotes that I had mentioned a little while ago, I actually use them. And when you try to develop relationships with people inside or outside of the business, you see the walls coming down. We're on this team together, one big team. We're trying to grow a business, and we're trying to help customers simplify their lives. So having that relationship with the CTO, when I needed a new email platform that cost much more, which was going to provide CRM, email, journey maps, he was one of my first advocates to getting this approved. So it does work. It doesn't happen in a day. Relationships never do. And if it does, then that's a rarity, because it's just something that you constantly have to work on.
Sure. So just for clarity, what sort of time frame are we talking about there? Because and how long did it take to get from that sort of initial sort of discussion to get into that sort of like support or a good kind of working relationship? I mean, how long did that sort of take? Because you say it doesn't happen overnight.
That particular one was about 6 to 7 months.
Right. Get busy, folks.
And in the big scheme of things, that might appear to some people as, oh, that wasn't very long at all. But you just have to keep chinking away at it, and realizing that as a CX professional, you have two customers: your internal customer and your external customer. Employees drive customer experience. So the more employee advocates that we can have in a business is going to drive customer experience within that business.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also kind of like some people might say, oh, it hasn't taken that long. But then there's also kind of another perspective, which is, yeah, but it's still 6 to 7 months. And if you keep putting it off, it will still take you maybe up to 6 to 7 months. So get started.
Exactly.
That's the thing. So brilliant. I mean, I think that's kind of the whole point of all of this, is that as you say, kind of, Sue, is that people should never forget that, yes, we are here to try and to serve our customers kind of better. When we talk about serving our customers better, we tend to generally mean our external customers, people that pay the bills, as it were. But we also need to remember and not forget that we have internal customers, in inverted commas, or stakeholders, people that need to work with in order to deliver that, and that they are an essential part of it. So, it requires us to build relationships and to build partnerships and allyships and all these different sort of things, and that takes time. So thank you for kind of highlighting that, and it's an essential part that people get to work on. It's not just about their program, but it's also about the support that they get and the relationships they have in order to deliver these kind of programs and to deliver all these outcomes that everybody wants to see. So get busy, ladies and gentlemen, because this stuff takes time and effort and shoe leather. But thank you for highlighting that, because it's not something we've actually talked a lot about on the podcast. That sort of whole social dynamics around organizations, and so it's a good point that it's good to emphasize that. But I then just wanted to say thank you for that, and then say, well, so is there anything anything else you'd like to highlight that we've sort of missed out on this sort of subject before I ask you some more general questions?
On the alignment, I would also say make your chief marketing officer your friend. I think it's CX professionals. We need marketing's help to understand the brand and the brand promise, and just general branding, because CX professionals tend to get excited when the prospect becomes a customer and then drives that experience from that point. But my view is the journey should be from awareness to advocacy. And from the marketing standpoint, they believe that I think in general, they believe that our job is done when we've done our campaigns to push things along so that the customer becomes aware of us, they consider us, and then they buy from us, and then they go to the next acquisition. But the buyer journey and the customer journey, while they're two separate, in my opinion, that they need to be, it's one journey that they're taking. It's you become aware and you go through all the things that you go through on your journey, whatever whatever that experience is. And it's very important that there be more collaboration between customer experience professionals, the team, even if it's one person doing the function, and other functions in the organization. To your point, the socialization is key.
Super. So, thank you for that. Zooming out a little bit and thinking about kind of more things, kind of like broadly, I've got some couple of quick questions, or I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 questions, just to kind of like to wrap up. So, we can all agree the last few years have it been weird, different, challenging, kind of call it what you will, but we've seen some big changes, and I've been asking kind of people, what are some of the things what's the biggest lesson that you've learned over the last kind of like few years, and how is it going to inform how you do things kind of going forward?
Back to the technology, if you don't mind. As you know, with COVID, for a lot of companies, it became digital first. Get those digital transformation projects out there, and they became more agile. I did a presentation about how digital transformation projects went from timeline of 3 to 4 years to 3 to 4 months at the longest, because we couldn't get out of our houses. This was the only way to get to prospects, grow our customer bases and things of that nature. The problem that I noticed and there's plenty of research that shows that leaders said that, we've done our digital transformation projects, but over 50% of them failed. And that's because they didn't take the time. Why are you doing this why are you doing this transformation project? What's the purpose? What's the business need? Or how is it solving this business problem? Where's the need? How is it impacting customers? How is it going to improve things for them? Not taking that purposeful view before jumping to the digital. That's why I always say customer first trumps digital first.
Right.
And I think we've all been guilty of jumping to that just because of our environment.
Yeah.
That one has been very key. Another one has been the transformation in the contact center that I've been very, very interested in, and coaching some organizations who have have contact centers. And that's, how do we go about pivoting from viewing a contact center as a cost center to it becoming a profit center?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all about the fact that the contact center, for the most part, is the first interaction a customer has with the brand. So it can't just be, oh, we're going to resolve an issue. It has to go further. How can they be proactive? How can they be predictive? I know, reading other reports, organizations that have contact centers, and I believe it's been like over 60% of these organizations are really pushing on AI and different types of NLP, text analysis and things of that nature to get down to that sentiment. So how can we, when we chat with customers, how can we be predictive? How can we be proactive? Because that's going to make that call or contact center drive profit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So thank you. So here's what we're going to do, because I know we're kind of like, we're kind of running, the time is running on. And what I wanted to do, just to kind of like finish up, I wanted to ask you some punk questions, because I always do that around here. And so there's two questions I normally ask, but I also know, so that you, before I ask you these two questions, you have a Queen punk rock story that you told me about before we started recording, and I wanted you to tell me that story, because I've Queen punk. What? Tell me the story. Help me make that link?
It has to do with Queen and the Sex Pistols.
Okay.
At one point, they were recording in the same studio,
Right.
and Sid Vicious came up to Freddie Mercury and was saying, "Oh, well, you think you're all that, blah 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 blah," you know, being a big man on campus. And Freddie Mercury teasingly called him Sid Ferocious, just being funny,
Mm-hmm.
and really pushing back on what Sid Vicious was doing. And what came out of that was one of the best songs, and one of my favorite Queen songs, it's called Coming Soon, off the Game album, which is kind of their hats off to punk rock. But it shows that having that punk attitude, and especially in CX, you need to be agile and quick to change to what your environment throws at you. In our case, constantly changing customer expectations. How can we change on a dime to meet their needs and more?
So that's brilliant. I love that story. I'm going to have to check out that song so I can kind of hear it. But the first question I wanted to ask you is that what one word or what phrase would you use to describe a more punk approach to CX? And I have a suggestion, maybe, because I think you might have already given me the answer. And the answer might be Sid Ferocious.
Yeah, okay.
Because if I put it on there, and because I've got this list of 175 kind of like different words and phrases, and if I put it on there, Sid Ferocious, then I'll completely remember.
It's all about pushing back on the norms.
There you go. But
that's
almost like that's that phrase that will then, it kind of like points to the story and about pushing back on the norms. So if I can, then I will use Sid Ferocious. And then, because then, Sue, you get on the list. And that's kind of a memorable inclusion, I think. What do you think?
Oh, hey, I'm honored. I'm
fantastic.
Very honored.
Fantastic. So, second question is, so I've been looking for, I did a follow-up to Punk CX, and it was called Punk XL, and it was this idea that if you were to succeed in experience, you have to take a more integrated, holistic, systemic kind of look at experience and at all sorts of different levels, from the customer and the employee, kind of personal leadership, impact on the world, that whole sort of thing. And that's why we talk about Excel as experience leadership, because we talk about brand leadership, technological leadership, market leadership, all these different things. But we don't talk about experience leadership very much. And I think we should start. And to help with that, I've been asking people, what company or brand do you think is an experience leader? Like, who's setting the bar? Who's raising the bar? Who's doing things in a much, much more connected kind of way? And why? So who would you say? Who would you hold up and go, I think they're doing all right. They're definitely worth following.
Well, I'm sure it's not the first time you've heard it. But I would say Apple.
Okay.
And not because, and you hear the quotes from Johnny Ive, you hear the quotes from Steve, may he rest in peace, Jobs, about the design of things. It's not how pretty it looks. It's about the function. So making things functional to simplify our lives was really how the Macintosh, and I did have a Macintosh, by the way. Just thought I'd throw that out there. But to me, what's become the glue, besides the customer experience leader, professional, driving the alignment, is in storytelling. How can we create stories that reach people on an emotional level, that will cause them to change their behaviors?
Right. And
I think Apple does that very well.
Awesome. Well, I think that you're right, and those stories have impact both outside the firm and with its customer base and its fan base and things, and also the investors and things, but also inside the company as well. And so I think it's a good example. I wish there were more examples like Apple that come up as frequently, but there doesn't seem to be, because they're just out there and keep doing it. They are a bit of a machine, but they are definitely one that's definitely worth kind of looking at and learning from. I think you're absolutely right, and they've been doing it for decades. But Sue, I think I'm going to close it off kind of there, and I want to kind of say that thank you for spending your time and sharing your insight and your expertise with us today. Thank you for also kind of like helping us shine a light on an area that, we talk about what we don't necessarily pay that much attention to, and it's like the hard yards that need to be done in order to develop those organizational kind of like relational kind of like bridges that are essential to the success of many service and experience initiatives. So yeah, just want to say thank you for helping me shine a light on that today. That's been ace.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I always love chatting about CX. We have to have more conversations with CX so that we can finally get CX into the mainstream.
Awesome. Wow, what a great interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Find out more about me and the work that I do at adrianswinscoe.com. Do leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you have any comments, feedback, or questions about the podcast, then feel free to send me a message to podcast@adrianswinscoe.com. And do tune in again. Thanks very much.